right, well, today's Wednesday. We have a Bible story video that we're going to show. But first I'm going to pray, and then we'll jump right to the video, all right? Heavenly Father, we thank you for another day. We thank you that, Jesus, you're alive, and you are working in us, and you do so many amazing things through us. So please help us to stay focused on you, to do what you have called us to do, and Lord, just be humble and kind children of God. So be with us in our short time together. In Jesus' name, amen. Enjoy the video.
The Bible. It's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how He created us and loves us so much that He made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. And now for an amazing story, inspired by the book of Matthew, chapter 26, verses 36 through 56.
For months, the Jewish religious leaders had been plotting to silence Jesus.
He called us pretenders, snakes!
On the Sunday before Passover, Jesus entered Jerusalem to great cheers from the crowds.
Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord!
But even as the crowd swarmed in to see what Jesus would do and say, one of Jesus' closest followers, Judas, went to the religious leaders with a very sneaky plan.
What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?
How about a cool 30 pieces of silver?
Jesus knew these plans, but he also knew that his mission was to face those who hated him and let them take him without defending himself. He prepared his closest friends for this during a Passover meal, and then afterwards led them out of the city toward the Mount of Olives. Judas had already left them.
In a little while, you will no longer see me. Then after a little while, you will see me. I came from the Father and entered the world. Now I am leaving the world and going back to the Father.
The air cooled as the evening darkened.
This very night, you will all turn away because of me.
Peter, the most outspoken of Jesus' friends, quickened his step and tightened his hand on the sword he was carrying.
All the others may turn away because of you, but I never will.
What I'm about to tell you is true. It will happen tonight. Before the rooster crows, you will say 3 times that you don't know me.
I may have to die with you, but I will never say I don't know you.
Me too. Same.
By the time Jesus and his friends reached the Garden of Gethsemane, they were exhausted.
Sit here while I go over there and pray.
As the other disciples settled in on the cold, rough ground, Jesus took Peter, James, and John along with him to a grove of ancient olive trees. The weight of what was coming pressed down on him.
My soul is very sad. I feel close to death. Stay here. Keep watch with me.
We're here for you.
We got this.
Prayers. The 3 friends found seats among the knotted tree roots, and Jesus went on a little further. Then suddenly, he fell down on the ground, face first into the dirt. Words poured out from deep inside.
My Father, if it is possible, take this cup of suffering away from me. But let what you want be done, not what I want.
After a short time, Jesus returned to his friends. They had all fallen into restless sleep. Jesus touched Peter's arm.
What? Huh? We're just praying.
Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour? Watch and pray. Then you won't fall into sin when you are tempted. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak.
We'll stay awake this time.
Got you covered.
Again, Jesus threw himself down to pray. His pain was so deep, blood and sweat beaded on his forehead.
My Father, is it possible for this cup to be taken away? But if I must drink it, may what you want be done.
Jesus returned to his friends once more, to find them still sleeping. The agony in his spirit forced Jesus to lay his heart out to God once more. He prayed the desperate words again, begging God to take away what was coming, and at the same time, revealing his complete trust in God's plan.
Let what you want be done, not what I want.
At last, Jesus knew the time had come. He returned to find Peter, James, and John buried deep in sleep. Beyond them, his other followers slept too.
Are you still sleeping and resting?
The disciples struggled through a fog of sleep, blinking and yawning. Below them, torchlight showed an angry mob climbing up the hill. The men were waving swords and clubs, shouting as they came.
Look, the hour has come. The Son of Man is about to be handed over to sinners. Get up, let us go. Here comes the one who is handing me over to them.
Jesus' friends staggered to their feet, and Peter clutched his sword. As the mob marched closer, they could see the man in front of the mob. It was their friend Judas.
Judas? What are you doing?
The mob had been sent by the Jewish religious leaders. Judas had already explained to them that he would greet Jesus with a kiss, so they would know exactly which man to arrest.
Greetings, teacher.
Judas ignored the other disciples and went directly to Jesus, kissing him on the cheek in greeting. Jesus drew back and looked Judas directly in the face.
Friend, do what you came to do.
The mob surged forward as the disciples just stood there, frozen and confused. As men grabbed Jesus, Peter suddenly sprang to life, awkwardly drawing his sword.
Should we use our swords?
Peter didn't wait for an answer, but he struck out wildly. His blade sliced right through the ear of the high priest's servant.
Oh! Stop this!
Jesus touched the servant's ear. Immediately, he was healed.
Put your sword back in its place. Do you think I can't ask my Father for help? He would send an army of more than 70,000 angels right away. But then how would the scriptures come true? They say it must happen in this way.
Jesus turned back to the mob and the men who held him. They hovered there, uncertain, in the flickering light of their torches.
Am I leading a band of armed men against you? Do you have to come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courtyard teaching, and you didn't arrest me. But all this has happened so that the words of the prophets would come true.
No one could respond to Jesus. Instead, they arrested him and led him away. And his friends who said they'd be with him through anything ran away. Jesus made the choice that would bring life to everyone, but that would cost him everything.
All right, so for our activities today, all you're going to need are two different kinds of coins. I have a nickel and a penny, but if you want to do a quarter and a dime or whatever. But one of them, and we're going to say the nickel is going to stand for true, and the penny is going to stand for false, because I have a few true false questions that I'm going to ask. And as you're watching this, just hit pause and choose whether you think it's true or false. So grab a penny or a nickel and set them in front of you, and I'm going to ask the questions. Okay, here we go. Question number one. For months, the Jewish religious leaders had been plotting to kill Jesus. True or false? 2. Judas was paid 20 pieces of silver to betray Jesus. True or false? Jesus' disciples stayed up all night praying in the garden. True or false? Peter promised Jesus he would never turn away from him. True or false? Jesus prayed all night in the Garden of Gethsemane. True or false? In the garden, Jesus prayed for God's will to be done. Judas told the mob sent by the Jewish leaders that he would shake the hand of the person they knew who to arrest. When Peter cut the servant's ear with a sword, Jesus healed it. After Jesus was arrested, his disciples ran away, even though they had promised to never leave him. When Jewish leaders came to arrest Jesus, he hid in a grove of trees and prayed that they would not find him. What did Jesus do? The disciples bravely stood up for Jesus in front of the angry mob who came to arrest Jesus. True or false? And the last one, Jesus prayed for God's will to be done, even if it meant he must die. True or false? Now, as you go back and think about these questions, what made them true and what made them false? And why don't you find the story? It's found in Matthew chapter 26, verses 36 through 56, and try to answer these questions, because some of them were kind of tricky. But I didn't say the answers, so I hope that you guys find the answers yourselves. Dig in with your family to the story and try to discuss that. So the example that we get from Jesus here is that he humbly went to the cross. He knew he was going to be arrested. He prayed, Father, not my will, but your will be done. And he knew what was coming, but he still humbly went to the cross. And that is an amazing way to live, to be considerate of others before your own needs. So this last game we're going to play, it's just flipping coins. And really, you could practice at how good you flip, because sometimes I used to have to throw, but maybe you can like flip. So we're going to just play heads or tails. Actually, not we, but you and your family. Just play heads or tails. And you know what? Have whoever is calling it, call it up in the air. But how about instead of you wanting to be right, just pray, God, help me to want them to be right instead of you. Another way of just practicing humility, putting others first, and Lord, just asking the Lord to help you with being okay with not winning. That's just a great way to practice humility. So anyway, that's all I have for you today. I hope that you've enjoyed the Bible story. I hope that you have just enjoyed our time. Play some games, take some pictures, send some videos, because we are really, really missing our sweet little friends. I love you. I pray that your weeks are full of the love of God, and that as you practice humility, your lives are truly changed, because that is what we want, and I know that's what the Lord wants for you. So walk in humility today, friends. Mwah.